The world beyond the stars was vast and silent until that day when the skies trembled with light and sound. For centuries, the beings of the outer worlds had spoken of humans as ancient myths, a forgotten species that once roamed the galaxy with unmatched power and mystery. Stories passed down through generations described humans as both creators and destroyers, capable of kindness that healed worlds and fury that could burn them. Most did not believe such creatures ever existed. They thought humans were tales meant to teach caution and humility. No one expected that those myths would one day return. In the quiet expanse of the planet Vareth, life moved slowly. Its people had built their civilization on peace and knowledge. They studied the stars, mapped galaxies, and recorded every known species. Yet there was a blank space in their records marked only by one word: humans. The elders told stories to their children about how humans had once walked the stars, how they had built ships so massive that planets could see their shadows from light years away. Some said the humans destroyed themselves in wars of pride. Others said they had gone beyond the edge of the galaxy, searching for something greater. No one knew the truth. They were legends, nothing more. Among the people of Vareth lived a young astronomer named Elian. He spent his nights at the edge of the observatory dome, scanning the endless blackness. He was fascinated by the myths of humans. While others laughed at the idea, he collected fragments of data, old transmissions, broken signals, forgotten archives from lost colonies. He wanted to believe there was something more, something hidden behind the silence of the stars. Sometimes, when he gazed at the constellations, he imagined ancient human fleets sailing between them, their engines glowing like suns. It was a dream he never shared aloud, not even with his closest friends. Then one night, everything changed. Alien scanners picked up a faint pulse, repeating every few seconds. It was old, buried beneath layers of cosmic noise. When he filtered the signal, he realized it was not random. It carried structure and rhythm, the mark of intelligent origin. The pattern was unlike anything known. He listened to it for hours, decoding its sequence until he recognized fragments of an ancient language that had been recorded in the forbidden archives, the language of humans. His hands trembled as he replayed it again and again. It was faint but clear. The message contained coordinates. Elian sent his discovery to the Planetary Council, but they dismissed it as interference or a glitch. No one wanted to believe that the myths could return. Yet within days, other worlds reported strange readings in their skies. Stars dimmed for seconds at a time. Gravity shifted faintly. Something massive was moving across the edges of known space. The council called for silence, fearing panic among the people. But rumors spread faster than orders. People gathered on hills and towers, looking up at the night sky, whispering old stories of the humans. Weeks passed. The signals grew stronger. Alien spent every hour at his console, unable to rest. He mapped the signals and realized they formed a path leading toward their system. Whatever it was coming closer. Then one morning, before the sun rose, the air began to hum. It was a low vibration, deep and endless, that echoed through every structure. Birds took flight, animals hid underground, and people looked up in fear and wonder. The clouds turned bright, not from sunlight, but from something else, something burning across the atmosphere. When the first ship appeared, the world fell silent. It was enormous, larger than any structure built by the Varethians. Its hull reflected the light of their sun like a mirror, and symbols covered its sides. Symbols no one understood except Elian. They were human markings. The ship floated above the capital city, motionless, a mountain of metal suspended in the sky. Then another appeared beside it, and another, until the heavens were filled with thousands. The fleet stretched from horizon to horizon, a wall of steel and light. It was not one ship, but an armada, 10,000 dreadnoughts, each larger than the last. The people stood frozen. Some fell to their knees, praying to the old gods they had forgotten. Others screamed and fled, believing the end had come. The council sent emergency messages into the air, but the communication channels went silent. No response came from the ships. They simply hung there, watching. Hours passed, and the tension grew unbearable. Elian went to the central tower where the sky was clearest. Through his telescope, he saw the details on the ships, their scars, their ancient designs, the insignias of human colonies that had vanished millennia ago. He knew then that the stories had been true. The humans had not died. They had returned. When the first transmission came from the fleet, it was in a voice old yet steady. It spoke in the ancient tongue, But the translators quickly converted the message. It said, "We have come home." Those words spread across the world. People wept, unable to understand whether it was hope or doom. The humans, once thought extinct, had survived beyond the edge of the galaxy. No one knew what had driven them to return now. Their ships were silent, their weapons cold, yet their presence alone felt like thunder waiting to break. Elian spent the following days trying to communicate. He sent signals in every frequency he could find. Finally, one of the ships responded. A beam of light descended from the sky, touching the ground near the observatory. It shimmered and formed a shape. A tall figure, human, wearing armor that seemed made of light and metal fused together. The figure looked at Elian and the others gathered nearby. Its eyes carried the weight of centuries. When it spoke, its voice was calm but filled with power. "We have traveled long," it said. "The galaxy forgot us, but we did not forget the galaxy." The figure spoke of endless journeys through empty space, of battles against time and distance, of watching civilizations rise and fall. The humans had gone beyond the known universe in search of survival after their worlds burned in ancient wars. They had rebuilt themselves among the stars, stronger, colder, but still carrying the memories of who they once were. Now they had returned to see what remained of their old home, to learn if peace could still exist in a galaxy that had forgotten them. For days, the skies remained filled with the silent fleet. Some planets sent ships to observe, but none dared to attack. The humans did not move, did not threaten, did not speak again. Their presence alone was enough to change everything. Trade halted. Governments panicked. Religions shifted overnight. The myth had become reality and no one knew what came next. Elian wrote every detail in his records. His name soon whispered among those who believed he had summoned the myths back. But deep inside, he knew it was not summoning. It was destiny. At night, he stood under the silver light of the Armada, watching as the Dreadnoughts glowed faintly against the stars. He felt both awe and fear. The humans were real, but they were not the same as the legends. They had seen things no one could imagine, and their silence spoke louder than any war cry. The galaxy had once laughed at their stories. Now the galaxy trembled at their return, and Elian, the man who once dreamed of finding the truth, stood at the edge of history, knowing the world he loved would never be the same. Again, Elian did not sleep for many nights after the humans returned, because every time he closed his eyes he saw the sky filled with light and shadow from the giant ships above. The people of Vareth no longer lived the way they used to because every city was covered in quiet fear and curiosity. Children stopped going to school and farmers stopped going to the fields because everyone only looked at the sky. The council tried to speak to the crowd every day and told them to stay calm, but their voices shook, and their faces showed that they were just as afraid as everyone else. The humans had not spoken again since that first message. Their ships floated silently and no one could understand if it was peace or warning. Elian spent his days at the observatory writing down everything that happened. He recorded every signal and every small change in the atmosphere. Sometimes he thought the ships moved slightly, but the machines said they had not. It was like the humans were waiting for something or someone. The scientists of other planets sent messages to each other, but no one dared to send a ship close to the Armada. A few small probes were sent and none returned. They simply vanished from radar, as if swallowed by the light of the human ships. People began to believe that the humans had powers beyond science and that their technology was not from this time. One morning, a lion was called by the council. The hall was crowded with officials, soldiers, and scholars. They wanted him to explain what he knew about the humans since he was the first to decode their message. Elian stood before them and told the truth. He said that the humans had once been explorers, that they built fleets to reach every star, that they were not gods but beings who could build and destroy with the same hand. The council asked him what the humans wanted now, but Elian had no answer. He said he only knew that they were watching. The council decided to form a team to try to make peaceful contact again. Elian was chosen as part of it because he was the only one who understood fragments of the old language. The team set up a small base near the capital under the shadow of the largest dreadnought. They used high-frequency transmitters to send messages into the sky. For 3 days there was no reply. Then on the 4th night, a beam of soft white light descended from one of the ships. Inside the light, a sound began to echo. It was a calm, rhythmic tone that matched the heartbeat of a living creature. The scientists realized it was an invitation to approach. Alien volunteered to go first. He walked into the beam and felt no pain or pressure, only warmth like sunlight. Then everything went white. When Alien opened his eyes, he was inside the human ship. The air smelled clean and the walls glowed softly. He looked around and saw figures walking toward him. They were humans, but not exactly like the ones in old records. They were taller and their skin shimmered faintly as if touched by light. Their eyes were calm and deep, showing both strength and sorrow. One of them stepped forward and spoke in clear words that Alien could understand. The humans said that they had watched this world for many years from far away. They had waited until the galaxy had grown quiet before returning. Alien asked what they wanted now. The human replied that they came not to conquer but to remember. The human led Alien through long corridors where walls showed images of stars and worlds that no longer existed. Alien saw cities floating above oceans and planets covered in green forests. The human explained that these were the places their ancestors once built before the Great Silence. Alien listened closely as the human told him that long ago humans fought a terrible war that spread across the stars. They destroyed more than they could ever rebuild. After the war, only a few ships remained, and those ships left the galaxy to survive. They wandered through dark space for ages until they learned how to live with peace. Now they had returned to find what was left of the galaxy they once called home. Alien felt both sadness and wonder. He told the human that their name had become a myth, and that most people did not believe they ever existed. The human smiled faintly and said that myths are only truths that time has hidden. The human explained that they had come to share their knowledge and to warn others not to make the same mistakes. Alien asked why they did not speak openly to everyone. The human said that they feared the galaxy was not ready yet. They wanted to study the worlds quietly first to see if peace could still live among them. Alien was then shown a vast window that looked out into space. From there he could see the full fleet stretching endlessly. Each dreadnought shone like a star. The human said that every ship carried millions of records of human history, art, and science. They carried the memory of what humanity once was. Alien asked if they planned to stay. The human said they would remain only as long as they were welcome. Alien promised to speak for them to the council and ask for peace. Before he left the ship, the human handed him a small crystal that glowed softly. It contained images and sounds that no one on Vareth had ever seen. It was a gift, a way to prove that what he had seen was real. The human said that they believed in the wisdom of those who remembered where they came from. Then the light surrounded Alien again, and when it faded, he was standing back at the base on Vareth. The others ran to him, asking what had happened. He told them everything, but his words felt small compared to what he had seen. The next day, Alien stood before the council again. He placed the crystal on the table, and the room filled with holographic images of human worlds. The council watched in silence as the history of the humans unfolded before them. They saw the rise of great civilizations, the destruction of war, and the long journey through darkness. When the images ended, the hall remained quiet. Then one of the elders spoke and said that they must treat the humans with respect, but also caution. Not everyone agreed. Some believed the humans were a threat pretending to be peaceful. Others believed they were a chance for the galaxy to learn again. The council decided to hold their decision until they could study the crystal further. Outside the hall, the crowd had gathered. News of Alien's meeting spread quickly. People looked at him with both awe and fear. Some called him a messenger, and others called him a fool who had brought danger to their world. Alien did not argue with anyone. He only looked up at the sky where the ship still floated silently. He wondered if the humans were watching and if they could feel the confusion of the people below. Days turned into weeks. The humans remained still, but smaller ships began to move among the larger ones. They looked like silver birds gliding through the sky. The scientists said these were scouts gathering information about the planets. Some said the humans were searching for something or someone. Alien kept trying to speak to them, but there was no more contact. At night he dreamed of the calm human eyes that had looked at him, eyes that seemed to hold the whole history of creation and loss. One evening, a bright flash appeared near the edge of the atmosphere. It was not from the human ships, but from another source. The scanners showed an unknown fleet entering the system. These ships were dark and sharp, not like the smooth design of the humans. The council panicked, thinking it was an invasion. The sky turned red with fire trails as the unknown fleet approached. Then for the first time the human ships moved. The 10,000 dreadnoughts turned in unison, forming a protective wall around Vareth. The ground shook with the sound of their engines. It was a sound that felt alive, deep and endless. Elian stood outside and watched as the humans faced the new arrivals. The unknown ships fired bright beams of energy, but they vanished before reaching the Dreadnoughts. The humans did not fire back. Instead, they released waves of light that spread across the sky. The enemy ships stopped moving as if frozen. Then they turned and vanished into space. The light faded and silence returned. The humans went back to their positions and the Armada became still again. That night, the Council declared that the humans had saved their world. People cheered and cried, and the myths that once made them laugh now filled them with gratitude. Elian looked at the sky and whispered that maybe the myths had returned not to rule, but to protect. Still, he could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The humans had shown power beyond anything known, but they had also shown restraint. They were waiting for something that no one else understood. Elian felt a quiet pull inside him as if destiny itself was calling him back to the stars. Elian could not forget the night when the human ships moved for the first time, because the sight of the sky turning white with their light had been burned into his memory, and even after the danger was gone, people still stood outside every night to watch the Armada above them. The whole planet had changed because of that moment. Markets were quiet. Factories stopped working and families gathered together in silence as if they were living under the watch of gods. The Council declared that humans were now protectors of peace and that all planets should remain calm. But there were voices that whispered something different. Some said the humans had saved them only to make them trust and surrender later. Others said that the humans were not here to rule, but to remind the galaxy of what it had forgotten. Elian did not join either side. He only wanted to understand why they had returned now after so long. Every morning, Elian went back to the observatory, where he kept watching the sky for any new movement. He wrote reports for the Council and studied the energy patterns from the ships. He discovered that the Dreadnoughts were not only ships but living structures. Their metal surfaces changed shape under sunlight, like breathing creatures made of steel. The energy they used did not match any known fuel. It was clean and constant, like power drawn from the stars themselves. Elian shared this discovery with the scientists, but most of them refused to believe it. They said nothing alive could be made of metal. Elian knew the truth was bigger than what they could understand. One evening, as he worked alone, a faint signal appeared on his screen. It was soft and rhythmic, almost like the heartbeat sound he had heard before entering the human ship. He followed the pattern and decoded it slowly. It was a message but not made of words. It showed coordinates leading far beyond Vareth toward a region of space that was empty. Elian knew the Council would not approve if he tried to follow it. They had already warned him not to make direct contact again without their permission. Still, he could not ignore the call. It felt personal, as if someone from the human fleet had sent it directly to him. After hours of thought, he decided to leave quietly. He borrowed a small research vessel from the observatory hangar and left at dawn before anyone could stop him. As he flew higher, the air grew thin and the planet became a blue circle below him. Above stretched the silent sea of stars. He turned his ship toward the coordinates and entered the zone beneath the Armada. The human ships floated like giant islands in the sky. When he passed beneath one, he could see its surface glowing faintly with symbols that looked like constellations. He whispered a greeting, though he knew no one could hear him. Then he continued toward the dark region beyond the fleet. After several hours, he reached the place where the coordinates pointed. There was nothing there at first. Then his sensors picked up a distortion like ripples in space. A small object appeared ahead, shining with pale light. It was not a ship, but a capsule drifting slowly. Elian moved closer and activated the scanner. The capsule opened like a flower, and a sphere of light floated out. The light spoke in a soft voice that sounded familiar. It was the same voice of the human who had met him inside the ship. The message said that the humans were preparing for something that could not be avoided. It said the galaxy was about to face a danger older than any war, something that had followed them from beyond the edge of known space. The message told him that the humans needed help to understand how much the galaxy had changed since they left, because they did not want to repeat their old mistakes. Elian listened in silence as the voice faded. He recorded everything and looked around once more, but there was nothing else. He turned his ship back toward Vareth. When he returned, the Council was waiting for him. They were angry that he had disobeyed their order, but when he played the message, the hall grew silent. The elders listened carefully and their faces turned pale. They asked Elian if he understood what kind of danger the message spoke of, but he said he did not. He only knew it was something powerful enough to make even the humans afraid. The council decided to call an emergency meeting with other worlds to discuss what they had heard. Days passed and the atmosphere on Vareth became tense. Ships from other planets began to arrive carrying leaders, soldiers, and scholars. The humans remained silent, but their presence in the sky made every visitor uneasy. Elian watched from the tower as ships landed across the capital. He could feel the fear spreading among people again. The council prepared a large gathering to discuss whether they should trust the humans or prepare defenses. When the meeting began, voices rose and arguments filled the hall. Some worlds demanded that the humans leave the system at once. Others said they should be welcomed as guardians. Elian stood quietly until one of the elders asked for his opinion. He said that fear had blinded them and that the humans had not shown hostility. He reminded them that they had saved Vareth from destruction without asking for anything in return. The crowd fell silent for a moment, but then the shouting began again. The meeting ended without peace. That night, the sky changed once more. The Dreadnoughts began to move slowly, forming a new shape, a wide circle that surrounded the planet. Their lights grew brighter until the entire sky glowed silver. Every person on Vareth stopped what they were doing and looked up. Then a voice echoed through the air. It was deep and calm, and it spoke in every language at once. It said that the time for silence was over. It said that the humans had returned not to rule, but to unite. It warned that something was coming, something that destroyed worlds beyond the galaxy's edge. The voice said that the humans could not stop it alone and that all civilizations must stand together or vanish like dust. When the voice ended, the light faded and the ships returned to stillness. The next morning, the world was different again. People talked in whispers about the coming threat. Some said it was only a story to make them obey the humans, but others believed it completely. Elian spent his time studying the message, comparing it with data from old records. He discovered faint traces of radiation matching signals from ancient war zones that existed long before humans vanished. It seemed that something was moving through space again, leaving the same traces behind. When he showed this to the council, they realized the warning might be true. They sent urgent messages to other worlds, but the answers came too slowly. The galaxy was too divided and too proud to trust the humans easily. One evening, Elian received another signal from the fleet. It was not a message, but a request to come aboard again. He hesitated at first, but his heart told him he must go. A beam of light carried him up once more, and he found himself in the same shining corridor. The same human stood before him, but this time the calm in their eyes was mixed with sadness. The human told him that the enemy they spoke of was called the Hollow. It was not alive, but it consumed life. It fed on energy and matter and had destroyed countless systems. The humans had fought it beyond the edge of the galaxy, but could not destroy it completely. They fled to rebuild and prepare. Now the Hollow was following the path back to the galaxy they once called home. Elian listened carefully, trying to understand. He asked what the humans planned to do. The humans said they would fight again, but they needed allies who could stand with them. The humans said they believed that Vareth and its people were the first to understand peace, and that was why they had chosen this world. Elian asked what he could do to help. The human handed him a small device shaped like a silver ring. It was a beacon that could connect their technology to his world's systems. The human said that when the time came, he must activate it, so that the humans could protect Vareth completely. Elian promised he would do it. When he returned to the surface, he felt the weight of the sky above him like never before. He knew the humans were not only legends anymore. They were soldiers of a forgotten war, still carrying the scars of endless darkness. He wanted to tell the people the truth, but he also knew it would bring panic. So he kept the device hidden and waited. Nights grew longer and the stars seemed dimmer. Strange flashes appeared at the edge of the sky. The instruments showed energy movements far beyond known space. Elian watched them closely and realized that the Hollow was already near. People began to feel uneasy again. Animals refused to move near certain areas, and the ground sometimes vibrated faintly even when no storms came. Elian spent all his time in the observatory staring at the data until his eyes burned. He could feel something approaching, though he could not see it. He went outside one night and looked up. The Dreadnoughts were glowing faintly like guardians waiting in silence. He whispered to himself that maybe the myths had returned not to end the galaxy, but to save it one last time. As the cold wind passed over the hills, he felt that the story of humans was no longer a tale from the past, but a warning. for the future that was already unfolding above them. The nights were no longer calm on Vareth because the stars, that once looked peaceful, now flickered with strange colors, and the air felt heavy like it carried a warning that no one could ignore. Alien spent every hour in the observatory watching the sky as lines of light appeared and vanished beyond the horizon. The instruments recorded new waves of energy that came from deep space. The readings did not match any natural phenomenon known to their science. The council asked him for explanations, but Alien could only say that something was coming closer, and the humans already knew it. Every night the great armada above the planet moved slightly, forming new patterns as if preparing for a battle that no one else could see. The people of Vareth tried to live normally, but their fear grew stronger each day. Markets were empty, and children whispered to each other that monsters from the dark were coming. Alien could not forget the words of the human who told him about the hollow, because they echoed in his mind like a shadow that followed him everywhere. He carried the silver beacon with him all the time, and sometimes when he held it he could feel a soft vibration as if it was alive and waiting. He did not tell anyone about it except a few scientists he trusted. They studied it secretly but could not understand how it worked. It looked simple, yet it contained power greater than any machine they had ever built. Alien warned them not to try to open it, because it was a link between their world and the human fleet. He said it should only be used when the danger truly arrived. One evening a message came from the human ships. It was short and clear. It said that the hollow had entered the outer edge of the galaxy and had already destroyed 2 uninhabited systems. The humans asked all worlds to stay alert and avoid sending ships beyond their safe zones. The council met again, and the entire planet watched their discussions live through the transmission screens. Some leaders believed the humans were only trying to frighten them to gain control. Others said the warning must be true because the humans had shown no desire to conquer. Alien stood before them and told them that the data he collected confirmed the danger. He explained that the strange energy readings matched the pattern of the hollow's movement. After long arguments, the council finally agreed to trust the humans for now. They ordered all space travel to stop until further notice. Days passed and the sky grew more restless. The Dreadnoughts began to glow brighter, and strange storms appeared in the upper atmosphere. Ships that flew too close to the clouds were forced to return because the energy fields were unstable. Alien noticed that the humans were creating a protective barrier around the planet using their ships. It was like a giant shield made of light. People gathered on rooftops at night to watch the sight. It was beautiful but also terrifying. Children called it the silver wall of the sky. Alien stayed awake every night listening to the low hum that came from above. It was the sound of the human fleet charging its defenses. One night Alien received another private signal. It came directly through the beacon. A soft voice spoke inside his mind. It was the same human who had guided him before. The voice said that the hollow was only days away, and that the humans would stand a fight, but they could not hold it off forever without help from the planets. Alien asked what kind of help they needed. The voice said they needed connection points on every world to channel the shield's power, and that the beacon he held could create one on Vareth. Alien understood that it was time. The voice told him to place it at the highest point of the planet, where the energy lines were strongest. Then the connection ended. Alien went to the council and told them everything. The hall was filled with noise as people shouted questions. Some said it was a trap. Others said it was hope. The elders looked at him with doubt but also fear. In the end, they allowed him to act because they had no other choice. Soldiers and scientists joined him on the journey to the northern mountains, where the magnetic fields were strongest. The mountains were covered in snow and the wind howled through the peaks. They climbed for 2 days carrying heavy equipment. Alien carried the beacon close to his chest, afraid to let anyone else touch it. When they reached the top, they built a small station and placed the beacon at the center of a circle of sensors. As the sun set, the beacon began to glow. The snow melted around it and the air shimmered. A thin beam of silver light rose into the sky and connected with the human fleet above. The people below could see it from every corner of the planet. The beam became a pillar of light linking ground and sky. The humans responded immediately. Thousands of dreadnoughts turned toward the pillar and aligned their energy fields. The sky exploded with light that spread across space like ripples in water. Alien and his team watched in awe as the stars seemed to bend. The shield was now complete, but peace lasted only for a short moment because soon after the shield activated, the first signs of the hollow appeared. The outer sensors showed dark waves moving faster than light. They looked like shadows crawling through space. When they reached the border of the shield, the light flickered. Every dreadnought fired beams of pure energy into the darkness, but the hollow absorbed them. It did not have a shape or color. It was like a moving hole that swallowed everything. People on Vareth watched in terror as the night sky turned black in parts where stars disappeared. The council called for emergency shelters, but no one could hide from what they saw above. The lion felt the mountain tremble under his feet. The beacon pulsed violently, sending waves of energy into the air. He realized the humans were using it to strengthen the shield. He could hear the hum of the fleet becoming louder and faster. Through his communicator, he heard the voice of the human again saying that the hollow was testing their strength, but had not yet broken through. The human said that if the beacon failed, the planet would be exposed. Elion stayed by it, holding the metal frame even as the wind turned into storms. Lightning covered the sky, but it was not natural lightning. It was the reflection of the battle above. Hours passed and the humans held the line. Thousands of their ships fired continuously into the void. The black waves twisted and pulled but could not pass the shield. Then the hollow changed its attack. It sent bursts of invisible force that struck the atmosphere. The ground shook and buildings cracked. People screamed as energy storms swept through the cities. Elion fell to his knees but refused to move away from the beacon. He felt its heat through his hands and he whispered to it to stay alive. The human voice returned and told him to hold on because the main fleet was coming from the other side of the system to reinforce the defense. The battle went on through the night. From the surface, it looked like the sky itself was burning. The black waves collided with silver light and explosions flashed like new suns. Elion could barely breathe from the pressure, but he did not leave his post. The soldiers around him prayed silently as the ground vibrated. When dawn finally came, the sky turned blue again but filled with smoke trails. The hollow had retreated for the moment. The dreadnoughts began to reposition, forming tighter lines. The humans had won the first battle, but everyone knew it was not over. The council sent messages of gratitude to the humans and ordered all citizens to remain indoors until further notice. The world was damaged but still alive. Elion returned from the mountains exhausted and covered in dust. He was taken to the central command where the leaders thanked him for his courage. They asked if he thought the hollow would return soon. He said yes because something that powerful would not stop so easily. He warned them to start preparing shelters and to unite with other planets before it was too late. The council finally agreed to form an alliance under the protection of the human fleet. Days turned into restless waiting. The humans worked silently, repairing their ships and expanding the shield. Elion helped transmit messages to other worlds explaining what had happened. For the first time in centuries, many civilizations began to speak to each other, not as rivals but as allies. The story of the battle spread across the stars. Some called the humans saviors, while others feared their power even more. Elion did not care about politics anymore. He only wanted peace and survival. At night, he still went outside and looked at the fleet glowing above. He could feel that this was only the beginning of something much greater than any war before. The sky of Vareth no longer looked like a place of dreams. It had become the border between life and the unknown. Elion knew the hollow would return because it fed on hope as much as on light. Yet deep inside, he believed that the humans had come back for a reason. They were no longer myths. They were the last guardians of the galaxy standing between creation and nothingness. As the wind blew softly across the quiet fields, he closed his eyes and whispered that they were not alone anymore and that, even in fear, there was still a reason to fight for tomorrow. The silence in the vast emptiness had a strange weight, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. The people on the ground had learned to live with quiet skies. For generations, they told stories about beings called humans. Some thought they were ancient gods, while others believed they were destroyers who once ruled the heavens, and then vanished, leaving behind ruins scattered across forgotten lands. No one had ever seen one, and so humans became myths whispered in fireside tales to children who fell asleep dreaming of shining ships and endless stars. Then one day, the calm sky began to tremble. It started as a low hum felt before it was heard. Farmers dropped their tools as the ground quivered. Fishermen looked up from the sea as the horizon glowed. The hum grew louder, turning into a steady rumble that shook the air. Birds fled from the trees and waves crashed harder against the shore. People ran out of their homes, pointing to the sky where a dark shadow was spreading like an eclipse. At first they thought it was a storm, but storms did not move in formation or glimmer like metal. Then one broke through the clouds, a massive shape outlined by light bigger than any mountain they had ever seen. A dreadnought, and then another, and another, until the sky was filled with them stretching farther than the eye could see. 10,000 dreadnoughts floating above the world in perfect silence. The people fell to their knees. Some cried. Some prayed. Others simply stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. The legends were true. Humans were real. The ships hung motionless for a long time, casting shadows over cities and forests. Then beams of light descended from their hulls, touching the surface gently like fingers reaching out. From those beams came figures wrapped in shining suits, their faces hidden behind clear visors. They moved with calm purpose, scanning the land as if searching for something or someone. The leaders of the world gathered quickly through trembling voices and broken communication lines. They argued whether to welcome the strangers or to hide, but there was no place to hide from the ships that filled the heavens. The strangers did not attack. They spoke in voices that were soft and strange, their words translated through echoes of old technology. They said they were not here to harm, but to remember. They said they came from the stars, but were once from this world. They said they were human. The people did not understand how that could be. How could the myths walk among them? The strangers explained in simple words that long ago humans had left this planet to find new worlds and had forgotten the path home. They had wandered through the darkness for centuries, building fleets and empires and machines that carried them farther from their origins. But somewhere in the quiet of deep space, they found fragments of their own story written in light waves and lost signals that led them back to this forgotten blue world. They returned not to conquer, but to see if the seed of their beginning still lived. The people listened, though fear lingered in their hearts. Some believed. Some doubted. Others saw opportunity in the arrival of such power. One of the strangers stepped forward, removing the helmet, revealing a face that looked like theirs. There was no difference, no alien shape, only a reflection of themselves standing under the same sun. A murmur spread through the crowd as disbelief melted into wonder. The stranger smiled and said simply, "We are home." That night the ships lit the sky like stars reborn. The people gathered on rooftops and fields, watching as the dreadnoughts hovered silently, casting silver light across the oceans. Children pointed and laughed while the elders wept. The return of humans changed everything. Old myths became history. Forgotten ruins became sacred. But the return also brought unease. The visitors spoke of balance and memory, but they also carried weapons capable of shattering worlds. Some leaders feared what would happen if the visitors chose to rule again. Others wanted to learn from them, to share knowledge and rebuild a bond between Earth and stars. The humans watched these reactions closely. They saw greed in some eyes and hope in others. They spoke among themselves in quiet tones, as if unsure whether they had made the right choice coming back. One of them, a commander named Arik, spent nights walking alone among the people, listening to their stories. He was troubled by how much his kind had changed and how much had been lost. He remembered the old tales of Earth told to him as a child on a cold ship drifting through the void. He had imagined this place filled with peace and life, but now he saw fear and division even before his people had said a single command. He wanted to help, but he knew that history had a way of repeating itself. As days passed, the connection between the humans and the people of Earth deepened. They shared tools and stories. The visitors taught them how to heal the land and how to harness clean energy from the sun and sea. In return, the people showed them the beauty of small things: flowers growing through cracks, rain on skin, the sound of laughter. For the first time in centuries, the humans felt something that had long been lost to them, a sense of belonging. Yet not all were content. Hidden within the dreadnought fleet were those who saw Earth not as home but as conquest. They whispered of lost glory and demanded that humans reclaim their dominion. They believed that returning meant ruling. Arik fought against them, knowing that such thinking would destroy what they had just begun to rebuild. Tension grew within the fleet as silent factions formed. On the surface, the people sensed it. The sky that once filled them with awe now felt heavy with unspoken fear. Then came the day when one of the dreadnoughts broke formation and fired a single pulse into the desert below. The blast created no fire but left a crater glowing with strange light. Panic spread instantly. The leaders of Earth demanded answers. The humans claimed it was an accident, a misfire caused by internal systems, but Arik knew better. It was a message from those who wanted war. He stood before the Council of Captains and spoke with steady voice, saying that if humanity repeated its old mistakes, they would lose not only this world, but themselves. The others listened, but their silence told him that peace would not come easily. That night he stood by the edge of his ship, looking down at the sleeping world below. He thought about how far they had come and how close they were to destroying it all again. The stars shimmered faintly, reflecting in his eyes like memories he could not forget. He whispered to himself that hope was fragile but still worth holding. As the wind of the upper atmosphere brushed against the hull, he knew that the next dawn would bring choices that would decide the fate of both Earth and the stars above. The morning came with a strange stillness. The dreadnoughts hung in the sky like frozen mountains of light, their shadows stretching across oceans and cities. People woke to the uneasy quiet and looked upward, afraid to breathe too loud, as if sound alone could wake something terrible. The night before had changed everything. The blast in the desert had broken the fragile trust between the humans who had returned and the people who lived below. Rumors spread faster than light. Some said the visitors were preparing to take control. Others believed they were testing the power of the planet. No one knew what to believe. On one of the largest dreadnoughts, Arik stood before a wide window watching the blue world beneath him. His reflection looked tired and heavy with thoughts that refused to leave. He had spent the night speaking with the council, trying to calm the anger that had begun to grow like fire among his own kind. Some captains wanted to leave, saying the world was not ready for them. Others wanted to strike and take what they believed was theirs. Arik wanted peace, but peace was becoming harder to hold. He remembered the faces of the people he had met in the villages, the way they had offered food and smiles, even when they were afraid. He had promised them that humans came in peace. Now that promise was breaking, and he felt it like a wound. Down below in the capital city, the leaders of Earth gathered in secret. Their words were sharp and fearful. They wanted to defend themselves, but how could they fight against a fleet of 10,000 ships that could end the world in minutes? Some wanted to talk. Some wanted to attack first before it was too late. A young woman named Alara, who had become the voice between the people and the humans, stood in the middle of the room pleading for calm. She told them that not all humans were the same, that Arik and his people wanted peace. But her words fell into anger. Fear had already taken root, and fear did not listen to reason. That night she sent a message to Arik asking him to meet her in the old ruins beyond the city, where it had all begun. He agreed, knowing it might be the last time he could make a difference. When they met, the wind was dry and the air carried dust from the desert. The ruins glowed faintly under the light of the dreadnoughts above. They stood facing each other, silent for a long time. She told him that the leaders were preparing for defense and that the people were losing faith. He told her that a group within the fleet wanted to seize control. Neither of them knew how to stop what was coming. Arik looked up at the ships that once gave him pride and now filled him with dread. He said softly that sometimes returning home is harder than leaving it. Alara placed her hand on the cold stone and said, "Maybe home is not a place but a choice." Her words lingered in the air like a spark waiting for light. Far above them on another dreadnought, a captain named Korin watched the planet with cold eyes. He believed that humans had lost their greatness among the stars, and that only through strength could they reclaim it. He saw Arik's kindness as weakness. Without warning, he sent a coded signal across the fleet, ordering the ships loyal to him to prepare. In moments, the sky began to shift as formations moved like shadows turning against each other. Arik felt the vibration before he saw it. He looked up and saw the dreadnoughts changing position, their lights flashing in strange patterns. He knew what it meant. War. He ran back to his ship and sent orders to his crew to power down weapons and shield the planet. He broadcast his voice across the fleet, begging them to stop saying that humanity had already lost too much, that they could not return home by destroying it. Some listened. Some did not. Beams of light tore through the sky as dreadnoughts fired against each other, their energy burning clouds into ash. The people on the ground screamed as the heavens erupted. Cities shook. Mountains echoed with thunder. Alara ran through the streets, helping the frightened find shelter, her voice steady, though her heart was breaking. Arik guided his ship between the attackers and the planet, taking blows meant for the world below. His dreadnought burned, but he did not stop. He opened every channel, sending one final message that echoed through every ship and every home. He said that humanity was not made great by power but by mercy. That home was not something you conquer, but something you protect. His words carried through static and fear. Some captains stopped firing. Some turned their ships away. Others ignored it, blinded by pride. The battle burned for hours until the skies were filled with wreckage and fire. In the end, silence returned, heavy and endless. Half the fleet was gone. The survivors drifted like ghosts among the clouds. Arik's ship was barely alive, its lights fading. Alara found a way to contact him. His voice was weak but calm. He told her that the world below must remember both the beauty and the danger of what they had seen. He said that if humans ever returned again, they must come not as rulers or saviors, but as family. Then the signal faded. His ship descended slowly through the atmosphere, burning bright like a falling star. The people watched as it vanished beyond the horizon. The remaining dreadnoughts began to leave one by one, disappearing into the black of space, until only the quiet sky remained. Years passed. The scars of that day healed slowly. The ruins where Alara had met Arik became a place of memory. People came from far lands to leave stones and flowers. The story of the humans who returned was told not as a tale of war, but of hope and warning. Children grew up knowing that myths could become real and that power without heart was emptiness. One night, many years later, when the world had grown calm again, a faint light appeared in the sky. It was not a dreadnought, but a small vessel glowing softly like a wandering star. It circled the world once and then drifted away, leaving behind a trail of silver light across the heavens. The people looked up and smiled. They did not know if it was a ship or a dream, but they felt no fear, only peace. Somewhere in the far distance among the stars, the last of the humans who once filled the skies carried the memory of their home in silence, and the world below lived on, remembering them not as myths, but as the ones who came back to remind them that even in the endless dark, the heart of humanity could still find its way home.